Pacific Palisades fire was one of the most destructive wildfires in California's history. Mainstream media on the left and right have offered a number of reasons why the catastrophe was so destructive. But what if none of them is true? Stay tuned.
How did a single spark incinerate my hometown?
It just goes and goes and goes.
Worst natural disaster that our city has ever experienced.
The only way that the cats wouldn't be okay is if all of the Palisades burned down. We both looked at each other and went, of course that's not going to happen.
This was climate change, an absent mayor, the laws of nature, diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are distractions.
Let's figure out what happened here and why this got out of control.
We'll see how people with power accelerated this apocalypse.
It's the kind of thing what could have been if they were here quickly, and they just weren't.
The whole thing just burned right to the ground with the mayor and the governor within a block.
Everything to the left, to the right, and below us and above us has burned. Didn't happen here.
We unfortunately have no water in the fire hydrants. We're completely tapped out.
And then we'll see the day no one saw.
There was nobody there. There was absolutely nobody there. No firefighters there.
The response is so fucking minimal.
The firefighters who were on the beach, they were eating breakfast burritos and had been told to stand down, and they didn't come.
I'm Matthew Sherwood, and welcome to Factual America. The wildfires that consumed Los Angeles in January 2025 destroyed nearly 7,000 structures, forced the evacuation of over 100,000 people, and racked up damage estimated at $25 billion and counting. Was the devastation made worse by climate change, an absent mayor, DEI, or the laws of nature? Those are just a few of the prevailing narratives nearly a year on. And they are all complete nonsense, as Rob Montz tells us. His new documentary levels the blame where it is deserved and is already creating a media storm. You won't want to miss what Rob has to say. Rob Montz, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
I'm doing okay. It's kind of a cold, rainy day today in Richmond, Virginia. I was just out in Los Angeles getting some of that SoCal, 70 degrees, and questioning my geographical life choices, but otherwise I feel fine.
I think we're going to be discussing a lot about your geographical life choices, given the film, one of the films we're going to be talking about today. But just to remind our listeners and viewers, Rob's a documentary filmmaker who, according to his website, but I can back it up, is built a distinctive voice in online long-form storytelling. He tackles a lot of interesting questions, ones that others often shy away from. And I came across your eponymous YouTube channel a few months ago and highly recommend people check it out. A lot of great content on there and docs as well. But the main reason we reached out to you is to discuss this one doc that's making a bit of a splash now and will be for the next few weeks and well into next year. It's this Paradise Abandoned, which I guess tells the truth behind the Palisades fire. So thanks again for agreeing to come on. Maybe get us started. What is the Paradise Abandoned all about?
Yeah, and just for your listeners, the doc has not dropped yet.
Right.
We plan to release it this week, so it'll be pretty soon. If people want to watch it, they can just watch it on my channel at Rob Montz if they just Google my name.
Have you brought that forward? Because I think you were originally saying maybe even early next year.
No.
Yeah, always going to be this way.
I promise. We're going to feed people. I just got back from Los Angeles to 2 packed screenings.
Right.
Mostly filled with people that had known me since I was 2 weeks old.
Right.
And I feel obligations to them that override any long-term strategic concerns. So it's dropping soon.
Okay, good.
Trust on that.
Well, great to hear that because...
People probably are familiar. This is one of the biggest news stories of this year.
Right.
This fire that incinerated large chunks of Los Angeles and some surrounding communities. The area that was hit the hardest is a place called Pacific Palisades, which is nestled between the Santa Monica Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. Yeah. And that's where I was born and raised.
Yes.
And my childhood house burned down. We now know, or sometime between like 1 and 4 a.m. on the second day of the fire. And as I've been telling people, this thing happens. The kind of stuff that I just generally like to tackle are large news items like this that within the first 48 hours of media frenzy have all sorts of partisan explanations for them.
Right.
People jumping on it to make some predictable partisan point. And what we like to do is go into those news stories, kind of burn away a lot of the irrelevant stuff that tends to cling to people's minds in those initial bursts of coverage, and then also reveal some deeper scandal that got missed, or reframing and reformulating it such that this thing that people thought they understood, they actually don't understand at all. That's what I like to do. 16534 Las Casas burned down. And again, as I've said to people, I'm 42 years old. My only marketable skill, the only thing people will pay me money for, is to tell visual stories.
Right.
So it very much felt like this odd alignment between what the universe needed, which is the definitive investigation into why this happened, why a couple embers in some dry brush a couple miles from my home were allowed to grow to the point that they incinerated the most valuable and desirable real estate in Los Angeles. What the universe needed was a doc about that, and the one thing that I can do. The one thing that I'm capable of doing. So,
well, indeed, we're glad you do it.
I tried really hard. Yeah. I did my best. It's, I'm not a. People can judge for themselves. There's a trailer available at my YouTube channel, Rob Montz. If people want to see it, if they happen to catch this in the next couple of days, and then they can watch the whole thing and judge for themselves.
Okay. So as you say, it's your hometown. Your mom still lives there, right? Or did live there?
Well, she currently lives in Culver City in an apartment that's way too small for her and my stepfather.
Okay.
But she's actively in the process of rebuilding, which itself is... So the Palisades, I think, probably generally gets depicted as someplace that's uniformly hyper-affluent, right? It's a place of just 1%ers, and that's not true. Right. There's a lot of people that bought into the Palisades in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and including my mom, who bought Las Casas, I think in 1985, when it was the low-cost alternative in the punishing West Los Angeles real estate market. My parents moved from Santa Monica to the Palisades because it was a more affordable alternative.
Right.
And there's something like 25 to 30% of the residents of the Palisades are like my mom.
Right.
They bought in a couple decades ago, and then the Palisades real estate market really got supercharged in the last 15, 20 years. A lot of it is people who had houses in the Hamptons realizing they could just sell that house and buy something where it's always 72 degrees and they could still be 5 minutes from the ocean.
Exactly.
And so there's a flood of tech money and finance money. And there's always been entertainment money, but it really got supercharged over the last 20 years, where I think last year the average house in the Palisades sold for $5 million. But it wasn't always like that.
No.
And what's happened is after the fire, which burnt up 70%, the vast majority of those legacy families, the people that I grew up with, right? My tribe, people from my homeland, the vast majority of them, they're in their 70s, they're in their 80s. Of course, they're underinsured because the Los Angeles, the California housing insurance market is completely warped by malregulation. So they either had their policies canceled or they're forced to get a state-sponsored plan called the FAIR Plan, which in my mom's case is probably going to reimburse her about half of the cost of rebuilding. The vast majority of 70 and 80-year-olds faced with that financial reality are just going to sell their lot and move to Orange County, right? Or move to San Diego. And my mom's not. Sometimes in the face of, often in the face of my opposition, now that she's far enough along with it, I kind of find it oddly admirable that she's doing it. So she is actively in the process of rebuilding. I just saw the site a week ago. It doesn't look that much better than what people see in the doc. It's still just a pile of dirt, but now the dirt has been flattened and prepared for construction.
Well, so the feelings are still very raw, obviously, but I mean, one thing is you said from the beginning, what you like to do is sort of jump in there and look at these media narratives that kick in the first 24 to 48 hours. I mean, it doesn't even take that long, right? It's almost immediate. these things start being spread. And so before getting into sort of questions about what really are the crimes and scandals behind this horrible catastrophe, let's maybe go knock off a few of the I think as you describe them as distractions in your doc. So number one, climate change, right? Why isn't climate change, or is it just, is that a cover or is that just easy low hanging fruit, as someone might use that kind of parlance to describe?
Climate change is a useful boogeyman, particularly if you have a particular leftist political persuasion,
right? Because
it can be an all-purpose boogeyman that you're never really going to make any progress against.
Right.
That can also just so happen to be the boogeyman that can be the fall person, so that you don't have to take accountability for the actual mistakes that you made.
Right.
So this is not like climate change wise. I'm basically of the completely unsexy variety that I think it's happening. I think it's clearly having effects. I don't think it's a catastrophic risk. I think that we can manage it, but clearly temperatures, I'm completely open to the idea that temperatures are becoming more variant or they're growing. And that in part that could have effects on fire.
Right.
But one of the people I talked to while researching the documentary is a guy who works at the Breakthrough Institute, which takes a non-hysterical stance towards climate change, just doesn't think it's one of the top 30 issues plaguing humanity.
Right.
And they actually have researched this, and it turns out that climate change maybe made the fire burn a little hotter, maybe. Right. Right. But that gets counterbalanced by other things, right? So if you're of a particular, let's say, liberal ideology, very fixated on pouring tons of taxpayer dollars into fighting this nebulous boogeyman, you're going to be distracted from doing the basic blocking and tackling of good governance in Los Angeles. Unsexy things like properly financing the fire department, right? The Los Angeles Fire Department had the raw number of firefighters since the 60s has literally barely budged, while the population of Los Angeles, I think, has at least doubled, if it's not quadrupled. So it's got a much, much larger city with a firefighting infrastructure that is clearly not up to the task. And the story is just littered with examples like that of unsexy things that don't have any particular partisan valiance, that aren't going to get you some plush spot on MSNBC, but that actually matter in terms of just raw governance of a city filled with humans that is intertwined inevitably with California wildlife. So climate change. I think another one of these standard issue leftist explanations for the fire was that it was just inevitable. It was just the raw rules of nature, and that there was nothing to be done when you have low rainfall and you have supercharged Santa Ana winds, and what are you going to do under those circumstances? But I also think on the right, they ended up trying to shove this story into their own convenience, like brain dead simple narratives that they fed to their audience, primarily that this was about diversity and equity inclusion in the fire department, which it wasn't.
Right.
I don't think that DEI led to the elevation of some scandalously ill-equipped fire chief there or firefighters. Right. And they also really fixated on the fact that the mayor, Karen Bass, happened to be in Ghana on the day of the fire. That wasn't a good look for her. No. It probably was a mistake for her to go. But as far as I can tell, the fact that she wasn't there and the deputy mayor had to take over made essentially no difference on the ground. Right. So that stuff doesn't matter. We're trying to basically clear away, burn away the cheap partisan talking points. And the first half of the documentary is attempting to identify the actual specific concrete human errors that did make a difference, that did really matter, and that if there had been different people in charge, maybe wouldn't have happened.
So let's go through a few of those. What are the main sort of big human errors that are the reason that this is... a fire was going to occur, maybe that is true, but why it became the absolute catastrophe it became and didn't have to be?
So Let's not give it all away.
Well, I won't give it all away. So it is your dog.
I gave you a screener, bro, because you're the homie. You're going to talk to me, but don't spoil it for the audience. They're going to get to see it in like 48 hours, ideally, if launch goes on time. I mean, what we try to do also is you have a particular policy analysis, but something that it took me a while to learn doing this is also grounding it in individual human stories. Right. Again, it turns out that people like stories and emotions. They don't like to be bombarded with white papers.
True.
I'm saying that to my 28-year-old self. Okay. Right. It took me a while to learn that shit. And one of the people I talked to is named Miriam, and she lives in a house that is literally on the front lines of where the fire first made contact with the Palisades. It started up in the hills. It got blown down a valley, and it took about 25 minutes before it actually started burning houses. And she was directly on the perimeter. And we go and visit her, and the first thing she tells us is that all the houses to the left of her block, to the right of her block, above her block, and below her block are all incinerated to the ground. But her block isn't. Interesting. And that's because Miriam had, through heroic efforts as the head of the Palisades City Council, muscled the local fire department to do some very basic brush clearing around her neighborhood. And so we're not talking about a multi-month process of clearing out brush all through the hills that surround the Palisades. It's just the creation of a pretty simple, 10, 20 meter perimeter around her neighborhood. And as she says it, like, she thinks that's what saved them.
Yeah.
That the fire essentially stopped at the perimeter of the brush clearing. There were some embers that got blown onto the houses that local residents could basically put out with a garden hose, and their whole neighborhood was saved. The state of California owns the vast majority of that territory in the hills that abuts the Palisades. But the formal state policy is not to clear their own brushland, primarily out of environmental concerns for disturbing the precious habitat of various endangered bird and reptile species. And the state and their formal policy is that Palisades residents had to clear it on their own. And in order to do so, they had to submit an application, and they also had to pay for the permit to do the brush clearing themselves. Shockingly enough, that incentive structure led to an epidemic of chronic underbrush clearance for decades and decades and decades. And then once you have what happened on January 7th, where a bunch of other variables click into place, and that risk has been ratcheting up for so long, you get something as unimaginably apocalyptic as what happened to the Palisades.
Right. And again, not to, we've had a while back, we had someone on a doc talking about some of the fires up in Northern California, actually a few years ago. And similar thing, it as he said, it's not sexy, but the key was the houses that survived were the ones that didn't have hedges right around their houses, right? You don't need tinder to be running up to your house if you want to avoid something like this. But I think what was shocking about it to me is also that the state just keeps getting fined for this, right? They just don't
they're
care.
Repeatedly fined by the local fire department for being in open violation of the ordinances requiring them to clear their own brushland, and they just ignored them.
Yeah. And then, so a lot of, you pack a lot into a very short period of time, in the doc, and a lot of amazing sort of footage and sort of almost jaw-dropping sort of coincidences and things that happen, and lack of response time. But I guess another focus certainly is, and as unfortunately what happened to your boyhood home, was that a lot burned down on day 2. And so whether you can make excuses or not for why people respond slowly on day 1, what happened on day 2?
And this is a gigantic part of the story I didn't appreciate when I first started the doc. We thought it would just be about these individual human errors that allowed what happened on day one. But I talked to maybe 60, 70 Palisades residents over the course of researching this documentary, and this kept coming up. I was like, what is this? What is this? And it essentially amounts to, on the morning of day two, the winds, there were still winds, but they had died down substantially. Los Angeles had been flooded with fire crews because of California's policy of mutual aid, which basically requires fire crews in surrounding municipalities and even surrounding states to come help out if they're understaffed when fighting a fire. And you had various high-profile elected officials hosting press conferences in or next to the Palisades, promising a national audience to do everything in their power to save this place. This is on the morning of day two. And at that exact same time, the streets of the Palisades are empty. There's virtually no firefighters there. None. And something like 1,000 structures that had been standing after the initial onslaught of the fire burned down by that night, including someone that I talked to. So I grew up on Las Casas. Las Casas is bisected by Sunset Boulevard, this famous, iconic, very emotional street for me. My mom lived north of Sunset. That area got cleared out on the first day. But south of Sunset on Las Casas, on the morning of day two, there's a community of about 250 houses, all still standing on day two, including the two houses that Las Casas is named after. The Las Casases are there, right? These iconic, precious houses that have been standing for, I think, 100 years each. And by that night, on day two, they're all gone. And one of the people I talked to is a resident there, my friend Nathan, right? And I don't want to get too much into how that story plays out. I want people to watch the doc.
Understood.
Essentially what was said is, well, not very much has been said about day two at all, because the media, including the largest media conglomerates in the country, all missed this story. 60 Minutes didn't get this. CBS didn't get this. CNN didn't get this. Fox News didn't get this, right? All the large legacy corporate players missed this part of the story. So the elected officials in California haven't had to really provide explanations as to why they did what they did. But what you can basically surmise is they abandoned the Palisades primarily because there wasn't any water in the Palisades, because the 3 tanks in the Palisades had gone dry by about 3 a.m. on the second day. We can set aside why they ran out of water. That's a separate part of the story. But there was still water in the Palisades on day two. There was plenty of water on Palisades day two that we now know for a fact could have been used to save houses, because many Palisades residents, in open defiance of the police, broke back into the Palisades and used that water to save homes. It's not theoretical whether or not it could have been used. It was used. It was used, and they saved houses. And again, we interview a couple people that did just that, kind of putting the lie to the idea that there wasn't anything else that could have been done.
No, and absolutely heroic, these efforts. I mean, I won't say anything much more, but I mean, what everyone you interview, your own neighborhood is very impressive. I wish I'd grown up someplace like that, because it was very, these people, what they went through and what they did to try to help each other and save their homes while they're at it. It's very impressive. Fortunately, they had to go through it, but
it's impressive. I almost felt kind of shame with it, man, because there's a lot of people, some of whom I knew. We interviewed this guy named George, who I've known since he was building sets for Christmas pageants at Palisades Lutheran Church in 1991. Yeah. George is this breed of blue-collar Palisadians. Your audience might not know that they exist, but they do exist, and there's plenty of them. Yeah. And he's like a nice guy that I've known for a long time. But then when the fires start, he openly defies the evacuation orders and stays in the Palisades for a couple days, probably saves my childhood church that I grew up with a hose and putting out embers that were falling on it, sleeps in that church, and then comes out on the second day. And in the documentary, he tells us what he sees. And there's a bunch of people like that if you just met them in normal life, you'd potentially be impressed by their resume, but you wouldn't necessarily know they had this in them. This level of heroic bravery, this level of courage and a willingness to put themselves at risk to save their community. And when I was talking to them, I admired it deeply. And I was also asking myself, would I have done the same thing? And I don't really know. I don't really know. I don't know if I have that in me. And I know those dudes do. I know for a fact they do, because there's plenty of physical structures that are still standing as a testament to their bravery.
So the authorities failed. It wasn't inevitable, right? But I think, and I hope I'm not giving, you'll tell me if I'm giving away too much, but you mentioned that there was a conscious decision to give up. And why is that? Why not fight for the Palisades?
So that's a good question. That's a very good question. And as I'm open about it in the doc, we don't really know. In part because we don't really know who made the call.
Right.
I mean, part of the reason that the response more generally was so botched, and I've heard this from multiple sources, including sources that have deep knowledge of the fire department, is that it wasn't clear what the chain of command even was and who was making the decisions, right? We don't really know. So we don't really know who's making the important decisions on day one, and so we certainly don't know who made the call to do what they did on day two and what their motivations were. We essentially just got greenlit to do a follow-up documentary, and I've said explicitly that part of my aim for that is to figure out why.
Right. Yeah.
And part of the reason they haven't had to say why is because no one's pressed them on it yet. Because again, all the existing media coverage on this missed this gigantic part of the story. So no one's had to fess up to why they made the decisions that they did.
I want to get to media coverage here shortly, but I just want to just remind our viewers and listeners, we're obviously talking with Rob Montz, and to do check out Paradise Abandoned. It will be releasing on the Rob Montz channel on YouTube in a matter of days. Probably by the time we get this in the can and out, it will be out. So do check it out. We hope you're enjoying this episode of Factual America. Please remember to like the episode and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to ring the bell to be notified of future episodes. In part 2, we discuss Rob's other projects and his exploration of provocative questions surrounding power, culture, and higher education, tackling subjects others shy away from.